59 of the 98 pages of the Georgia indictment, or 60% of the total, concerns just one of the 41 charges listed. That's the RICO, or Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's a charge whose federal version has been made famous in TV and film, ironically by one of the 19 defendants, Rudy Giuliani, who used it as a U.S. district attorney against the New York mob and others in the 1980s. Jason Carroll has more about it.
This is the 11th RICO indictment.
The Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO for short, was originally passed in 1970 as a tool to help wipe out organized crime.
The verdict was like a bullet, puncturing John Gotti's longtime image of invincibility from the law.
At the time, it was dubbed the trial of the century, the U.S. versus John Gotti.
The boss of the Gambino crime family was found guilty today on all 13 counts of murder and racketeering.
In the early 90s, prosecutors took down Gotti and charged him with racketeering, extortion, and murder. The law also used to take down the Lucchese family and mafia underlings throughout organized crime. RICO laws allowed prosecutors to connect multiple crimes among multiple defendants to tell a story of corruption.
This case charges more mafia bosses in one indictment than any ever before.
The prosecutor credited for using RICO to take on the mob was a young, ambitious U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Rudy Giuliani.
This is a great day for law enforcement, but this is a bad day, probably the worst, for the mafia.
And now, in an ironic twist, Giuliani is among those charged in the Georgia case, now having to defend himself against a charge he once prosecuted.
This is a ridiculous application of the racketeering statute. This is not meant for election disputes.
It's not just for people who are in organized crime. It's also for people whose collars are white and who may have Ivy League degrees. And so that's what we've seen in a variety of cases.
RICO sent shudders throughout Wall Street after jurors sent American financier Michael Milken to prison in 1990 for fraud related to insider trading and tax evasion.
And while RICO is a federal law, many states, including the state of Georgia, have developed their own versions. And prosecutors have used these laws to prove racketeering conspiracies. In other words, they string together separate allegations of misconduct committed by different people towards a common goal or purpose into a single indictment.
Fulton County, Georgia's DA, Fani Willis, is well known for using RICO. As an assistant DA, she used the law to prosecute a case against Atlanta public school educators accused of scheming to inflate standardized test scores. In her current position, she again used RICO against rapper Jeffrey Lamar Williams, known as Young Thug, alleging he oversaw crimes ranging from armed robbery to murder. He pleaded not guilty. His trial still underway. Legal experts say the RICO case involving Trump and the other 18 defendants is faced with many legal challenges.
The length of the trial is taxing on a jury.
Free sex,
and this will
free
be a long
slime.
trial. And the jury instructions at the end are hard to follow. They're complicated, and the jury will have to really pay attention closely.
Jason Carroll, CNN, New York.
Joined now by our Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst, John Miller. He's a former NYPD Deputy Commissioner. He covered organized crime's demise in New York under RICO as a reporter back in the 1980s. I was saying I always expect to see you, and do see you often, in those old mob footage.
It's my Hitchcock.
It's exactly. So how, in your experience, does a prosecutor benefit from a RICO law?
You know, the RICO law was written by Robert Blakey, a professor at Notre Dame Law School who was trying to tackle the problem with cases involving organized crime, the mob, where the boss was insulated from all the crimes which were done by people at the bottom or the middle. And he said, what about we charge the organization? So the organization...
One of the funniest aspects of the Georgia situation is that obviously Donald Trump is not going to go and personally become a false elector himself. He might not even actually contact the false electors himself, but he will set up a scheme for one of his underlings to engage in this act. However, Donald Trump did personally call the lieutenant governor, which is fucking nuts. Here's what you're not supposed to do as a mob boss. Call the guy in the position of power directly and tell him exactly what you want. So even from mob boss standards, you absolutely can, just like the federal prosecution has, nail him on numerous counts for directly engaging in acts of conspiracy, but also like playing a role personally in the conspiracy. Every fucking mob boss knows you're not supposed to make that goddamn phone call yourself. Donald Trump was like, fuck it, YOLO.
Is the enterprise, and anybody who works within the enterprise, including those who run it, are equally guilty for all the enterprise's crimes. So RICO gave prosecutors a way to tell a story to a jury that this is about a corrupt enterprise and it's run by a boss and these henchmen do these things and they're all responsible.
And Giuliani, how did he use it? I mean, was he the first to do it against the mob?
That's a great question because Anderson, Robert Blakey was sitting there writing this law, trying to figure out how to make it interesting because it's complicated. And he was, you know, watching the Edward G. Robinson movie, Little Caesar, where in the end he's screaming, "Is this the end of RICO?" And he said, "RICO, we'll call it RICO."
No kidding, really?
And then he had to fit the
That's where
words
it
to
came
actually fit the letters.
That's amazing.
You know, racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. It sounds awkward because it is. The acronym came before the words. But the point is, it sat dormant for 10 years, from 1970 to the late 70s, 78, 79, 1980. But Giuliani revolutionized it because he took it and he said, we're going to charge the bosses of all 5 organized crime families of New York City, the leadership of La Cosa Nostra, who sit on a board of directors called the Commission. The enterprise is going to be the Commission, that is the board of directors for the mafia, and we're going to charge all the leaders and not any of the little henchmen or anything. And he got convictions across the board in that case. And after that, people looked at RICO and said, this is a real tool to take down criminal organizations, cartels, gangs, and in applications that are strange where you see the corruption in a police department. So the Key West Police Department was identified as a racketeering organization and put out of business in a RICO prosecution. The Hells Angels.
You have to whisper your orders into your right hand's ear at the function. No phones. Yeah. And no notes. No notes.
Street gangs and so on.
Just very quickly, there's this person now who's been charged in Texas for making a threat against Judge Tanya Chutkan and others. I guess no surprise given the climate that we're in and the rhetoric that is being thrown around.
So we've seen threats to the Manhattan DA since Alvin Bragg bought the first Trump indictment, threats to Fani Willis in Atlanta and even to the sheriff, and now to this federal judge who was particularly tough on Donald Trump in the first hearing. This arrest is basically a...
What will it take? Like, I this is something I ask seriously because it also impacts me personally as well. Since the beginning of my shitty e-celeb career, I have been on the receiving end of a fuck ton of death threats. So much so that I'm comfortable with it. I'm used to it. You know what I mean? Like, at first it felt really shitty. I was like, what the fuck? What's happening? People want to kill me? That's crazy. And it feels like it's just a constant, especially if you are drawing attention from a lot of the most like insane right-wing circles, both online or in general. And this is absolutely something that is so commonplace now. Like, I know that conservatives love saying like, oh, the left is so violent, the mob is so violent, the leftist mob, like they dox you and they cancel you, whatever. But like, right-wingers in perpetuity have been doxing and also sending death threats to whoever the fuck they declare their villain. Like, always. They've been doing it. They've never stopped doing it. And I don't really know. Like, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? How will it stop? Now they're going after random fucking jurors and shit. How will it stop? You know what I mean? What do you do? And it's basically like, it's so normalized that you just kind of know. You just kind of expect it. As soon as I found out that Georgia actually reveals the name of the jurors, I knew immediately they were going to get fucking doxxed. Immediately. It's just, I shouldn't feel that way. We shouldn't think that way. We shouldn't expect that. But we do because we know how the right behaves.
A signal from the federal government that if you make these threats, we're going to find you, we're going to track you down, we're going to charge you. It's a measure of behavior modification. You can't get away with this just by doing it and thinking nobody's going to follow up.
Yeah. John Miller, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Some exclusive new reporting on the hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees that Rudy Giuliani is now staring down and the desperate attempts that he has made to get former President Donald Trump to cover them. With his attorney in tow, I am told that Rudy Giuliani traveled to Mar-a-Lago in late April on a mission to make a personal appeal to Trump to pay his legal bills. By going in person, Giuliani and that lawyer, Robert Costello, believed that they could help explain face-to-face why Trump needed to assist his attorney with those ballooning legal bills. They argued that really it was in Trump's best interest to do so. But apparently it fell on deaf ears. Trump is notoriously strict about digging into his own coffers. He did not seem very interested, I'm told, in covering everything that Giuliani and Costello wanted. One source says that he verbally agreed to help, but he didn't commit to any specific amount or timeline. Another source tells me that Trump really only agreed to pay a small fee from a data vendor that was hosting Giuliani's records. I'm told that was about $340,000, while in total, Giuliani's legal fees are in the seven-figure range. Giuliani's trip to Mar-a-Lago has not been previously reported. We're telling you about it first here on The Source tonight, but it does indicate the level of financial stress that he has been facing for months now. Some people in Trump's inner circle were actually surprised by Trump's unwillingness to pay for Giuliani's bills, given...
How are you in Trump's inner circle and you're surprised? Like, I don't even think Rudy Giuliani was surprised that Trump said no. He went anyway because he has no other options. If anything, Donald Trump is incredibly famous, most famous, for refusing to pay the $5 a month subscription at the top of the hour to avoid the 3-minute ad break. That's what he's best known for. Now, if you don't want to be like Trump, if you want to avoid the top of the hour ad break, then all you need to do is pay $5 a month in the form of a subscription, or a free one in the form of a Twitch Prime, or the very few lucky get gifted a sub. Right? Another way you can avoid the top of the hour ad break is by getting gifted a sub. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. But yeah, it's so hilarious to be in Trump's orbit, in his close circle, and be like, what? Donald Trump doesn't want to pay the legal fees of people that are his co-defendants who could potentially get him in trouble if they're not adequately protected?
He could find himself under intense pressure to cooperate with federal and now state prosecutors who have charged Trump. Giuliani already sat down voluntarily with Jack Smith's team this summer in 2 back-to-back sessions. He's now a co-defendant in the election interference case in Georgia. He is facing 13 criminal charges, like Trump, and potentially serious prison time. It's not out of character for Trump to not want to pay legal fees. This is something we have heard from many of his attorneys in the past, including his former attorney, Michael Cohen, when I sat down with him last month.
Now, history repeats itself. One thing that we know for certain is that Donald does not pay legal fees. Donald doesn't pay fees at all. There's a pattern to what he does. He will pay a little bit, fall behind, pay a little more, fall bigger behind.
I'm joined now by former White House counsel under President Nixon, John Dean. John, good to see you again. I mean, what do you make when you hear that Rudy Giuliani is going to Mar-a-Lago, making this desperate plea, trying to get Trump to pay for his legal fees?
I love this guy constantly being on CNN. One, because he's profoundly old, and two, he's like, his glasses from the Nixon era. He himself is a Nixon guy. Like, what do you think about a competent legal team in comparison to Trump's incompetent legal team? And especially as it pertains to like avoiding any kind of legal scrutiny for illegal acts.
And Trump not really reciprocating on most of that.
I think that Trump is aware that during Watergate, for example, the payment of legal fees got lawyers in a lot of trouble, as did joint defense agreements. The fact that he's not paying, though, is a pattern of this man. As Michael just said, he just doesn't like to pay his bills. So he will have people come after him to get the fees. He had an agreement with Michael, and Michael had to go to court to get his fees paid. So, Caitlin, there's no surprise here. And Trump, I think, is willing to tough it out. He doesn't think Rudy will flip.
But that is a concern. I mean, I think people, the Michael Cohen effect, people have said that Trump has kind of changed his tactics there because of a concern of it turning into a Michael Cohen situation, potentially.
I doubt that Rudy will. Rudy knows the inner workings of the system better than most as a former U.S. attorney from the Southern District of New York. He knows particularly the RICO law. He will try to poke holes. He will think he can prevail. He'll.
This is John Dean, who Nixon attempted to force to sign a letter of resignation that amounted to a confession that Dean had directed the Watergate cover-up without the knowledge of the president, Haldeman or Ehrlichman. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Watergate, White House Plumbers is a really fun look into, a really comedic and fun look into the Watergate disaster and how demonstrably incompetent, how unimaginably and hilariously fucking incompetent the Nixon administration was at spying on the DNC and the Democrats in general is pretty funny. Definitely recommend it. It's also, I mean, RFK Jr.'s most important supporter acts his fucking face off in it. Woody Harrelson is, of course, who I'm referencing here. Good show. Put one of the main characters. Is it new Kennedy fan? Yes. Woody Harrelson famously came out recently with a show of support for RFK Jr. Anyway.
He certainly, at the motion stage, the early stages of this proceeding, is not likely to flip. It's only if the government of Georgia can overwhelm him and he realizes he's going to go down and maybe he can save himself some years by cracking a deal.
I sat down with Bill Barr, Trump's former attorney general, of course, as you know, the other week, and he had this to say about what he has seen, he says, happen to people who were in Trump's orbit.
He leaves in his wake ruined lives like this, the people who went up to Capitol Hill, these individuals, many of the people who served him in government that got sucked into things, and he just leaves all this carnage in his wake.
Do you think he cares about that?
No, he doesn't care about that. Loyalty is a one-way street for him.
John, do you think Rudy Giuliani winds up as more carnage here if he hasn't already in some people's view?
I think he will. I think he's in deep trouble. The government's case, it looks like it's overwhelming. His federal issues have not been resolved. Trump could not pardon him in Georgia if indeed he is convicted in Georgia.
How about pardon himself? Trump could not pardon himself in Georgia either, let alone Rudolph Giuliani. You know? Oh, God. This is why I love the Georgia case, okay? I love it because it's like, it's a very good case. It's a very strong case. There's a lot of real harm and real conspiracies that occurred there. And I don't mean conspiracy theories. I mean like conspiring to do crimes. And obviously it'll be televised in its entirety because it's a state court. So I love that. And last but not least, Donald Trump has no like presidential jurisdiction, pardon power whatsoever in state affairs. As a matter of fact, as we found out, even the fucking governor does not have singular pardon power in the state of Georgia, unlike some other states. So it's awesome.
I don't think Trump is going to make it back to the White House. I think people.
Oh, yeah. The Roger Stone planning the fake electors video came out, too, which was an Ari Melber The Beat exclusive, which hasn't gotten a lot of momentum. I don't know why. Maybe it's like not a real bombshell. Maybe they're exaggerating it. Because usually things like that get a lot more coverage.
People are starting to get a glimmer of what that could be, and they don't want it. Maybe more Republicans will do that before the primary vote. I don't know. They're slow learners, apparently. So I think Rudy is going to get destroyed by this. It's sad, but true.
I mean, yeah, what is he, if he is as out of money as his attorney was arguing in court today that he is, I mean, the entire reason his attorney was in court today was arguing that he could not pay part of what he is being ordered to pay as part of that Smartmatic lawsuit. I mean, what does he do in that situation? Does he represent himself? I mean, what options does Rudy Giuliani have at that point?
Well, he can get a court-appointed lawyer at some stage. Representing yourself is the worst option because anyone who represents himself is likely to make bad decisions about that representation. I think Rudy is likely to go into Chapter 11 or bankruptcy of some sort. I understand his apartment is on the market. It could raise several $1 million, but he probably has a lot of debt he has to handle immediately as well. So I think bankruptcy is a potential and maybe a court-appointed attorney.
I mean, that would be kind of remarkable in the worst way. If someone was, once known as
Ain't no fucking way Broke Boy gets a court-appointed attorney. That is fucking hilarious. Dude. Oh my God. I wish Lowell Overruled was in Georgia instead of New York. Imagine Alex having to fucking defend Rudolph Giuliani. In court. Hasan make an offer on his apartment for 1/8 asking price. What is that? Whose apartment?
America's mayor, the role that he had after 9/11 is then potentially, as you predict could happen, being represented by a court-appointed attorney.
Oh, Rudy's selling his apartment. I can't wait for the Adam McKay movie of this. Oh, it's so true. There will be a banger Adam McKay movie made out of this.
And filing bankruptcy.
Are you even listening to the vid? Okay, I was fucking pissing, okay? I
to cover his legal fees.
It has a Shakespearean element about it, although I don't really think of Shakespeare when I look at Rudy and some of the news clips of him recently. It does have that kind of tragic tale that is being told in front of us. So we'll have to all watch, and no one wishes him ill, but he's gotten himself where he is.
What do you make of?
Can Rudolph Giuliani get 6.5 milli for his Upper East Side apartment? Yo, look how gross that shit looks. Bro, I'm not even kidding. I can smell it. You know what I'm talking about? I can smell that apartment. Just by looking at it, I can smell that apartment, and it's disgusting. Yeah, mothballs and red wine stains. I want to roll up to him and be like, I'll give you fucking $1 million. Not a single dime more. Take it or leave it, bitch. Take it or leave it, broke boy. The hefty price tag made us wonder if the 79-year-old was being realistic. It's on the Upper East Side, close to Central Park, on Madison Avenue. The building dates to 1906 and fronts a Gothic-inspired brick and terracotta facade. High floor ceiling, resident bows, plenty of sunshine. Original details include windows, hardwood floors, wood paneling, and leaded glass. The unit is accessed by a semi-private elevator. The former layout includes a living room, a library, a wood-burning fireplace, a dining room that leads to a glass conservatory. Eating kitchen comes with a butler's pantry, and there's a laundry room and a staff room with an entire ensuite bath. Oh, God, look at these bedrooms. Oh, but the Eames Cook chair. My man's got the Eames Cook chair, folks. Look at that. Two bedrooms, two baths were combined to create an impressive primary suite. It was a site of an FBI search. Ex-mayor's owned the home since 2002. Only one other apartment is currently for sale in the 33-unit building. That one is located on a lower floor and has 4 bedrooms. It's available for $2.8. At 2,200 square feet, the place comes out to be $1,300 per square foot. Giuliani's price is higher up and has a slightly bigger floor plan with 10 rooms, roughly 2,500 square feet. The last sale in the building was $3.7 million for a very similar yet more updated and glamorous apartment, says Jenny Lentz. As such, while the 6.5 is definitely rich, perhaps they are counting on the celebrity attachment. Yeah, I think he's putting this up specifically so we can get like a donor who doesn't even, who 6.5 million is nothing for him, to just basically do a cash infusion. I don't think it's because he's a celebrity. I think it's like a Trump loyalist billionaire who just goes, yeah, fuck it. Here you go. Shut the fuck up. Because there is no shot Rudy Giuliani won the deal for OxyContin maker to continue sales of drug behind opiate deaths. Wait, what the fuck? Purdue Pharma hired Rudolph Giuliani, the former New York mayor and now Donald Trump's lawyer, to head off of a federal investigation in the mid-2000s. The company's marketing a powerful prescription painkiller at the center of an epidemic that is estimated to claim 300,000 lives. While Giuliani was not able to prevent the criminal conviction over Purdue's fraudulent claims for OxyContin safety and effectiveness, he was able to reach a deal to avoid a bar on Purdue doing business with the federal government, which would have killed a large part of the multi-billion-dollar market for the drug. God, I fucking despise this piece of shit so fucking much. This might literally be one of the most evil things he's done in a sea of evil. At this point, he's just like competitively evil just for the fun of it. You know what I mean? This ghoul deserves everything that he's getting. Yeah, it's what I think of every time I think of all of his bad shit. He deserves every fucking bad thing that's happening to him currently for aligning with an obvious idiot like Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know. It's just very frustrating to see.
Of what we saw at Georgia overall, the district attorney there saying that she wants to have a March trial date. She's actually asking for March 4th of a trial date. I mean, whether or not that actually happens remains to be seen. But does that seem realistic, just given the makeup of this case, how complex it is, the fact that there are 19 co-defendants here?
I think what's going to slow down the Georgia case is the others will file a kind of motion that Mark Meadows has filed to remove the case to federal court. While the state proceedings will continue, it will bog things down a bit. And I don't really believe, from my talk with lawyers who've really studied this body of law about removal, that they are going to remove the case to federal court. And if they do, it's still the same Georgia prosecutors, and the calendar could be even clearer at the federal level. I don't know. It's just a different jury pool, broader, wider. So that's what's likely to slow it down, Caitlin, is the removal proceedings.
So you don't think that they're likely going to be able to get it moved from a state proceeding to, as Mark Meadows is doing, but also we are told by sources that Trump is also likely to do. You don't think that's likely?
I don't. It's hard to envision this as official behavior of any of the people. When you read that indictment and you read what is being included, Mark Meadows was not just setting up media.
I'd be so sad. Trump is trying to do this as well, by the way. Trump is also trying to make the move to take the court case to federal away from Georgia State, which is it's sad and it's scary. I don't think it'll happen. And yet, I don't like that he's even trying.
He was not arranging telephone calls. That's done by secretaries, staffers, White House operators. He's in the thick of this, and as the indictment brings out, is much different than his motion. So I don't think they're going to prevail. And many of them don't even have federal standing to remove.
Why not just take the spectacles off? Those are reading glasses, 100%. I don't know if you have any old relatives that need glasses. Usually glasses for old people have like two different versions where like in the bottom of your grandpa's glasses, they usually have like a reading portion. And it is specifically when you look down when you're reading, do you activate them? Bifocals, yeah.
Those who are the fake electors, for example, and it's just limited to those who were in federal office when these events happened.
Guys, you have to understand, the guy that they're talking to right now is fucking ancient. He was born in 1938. Okay, here he is. He was involved in Watergate. He was a part of the cover-up in Watergate and also gave testimony to Congress as a witness. His guilty plea to a single felony in exchange for becoming a key witness for the prosecution ultimately resulted in a reduced sentence. Which is really funny. It's funny to have that guy come on to talk about Donald Trump's criminal misconduct.
Yeah, I mean, and to bring this full circle, Rudy Giuliani is also saying he's going to potentially make that argument, though, I mean, he obviously did not work for the federal government. We'll see what the courts decide. John Dean, thank you for your perspective tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he has like firsthand